Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Push Pace Podcast, a podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to pushing ourselves towards a better, happier us, a chance to kind of sit down and talk more casually about whatever we want to talk about. And in today's podcast, for this week's podcast, I wanted to take some time to do sort of a Q&A. I went out onto my social media platforms and asked specifically, hey, what question can I answer for you? And hopefully that these questions can help maybe someone else out there or a few of you who might also have these questions too. Just give us a little bit more insight into our health, fitness, wellness, maybe rowing, Orange Theory stuff, kind of a mix of everything. So we're just going to knock out a couple of these questions today, and hopefully you can get some value out of this. So we're just going to go ahead and dive right into the first few big questions that were sent to me. So for this first question, it says, hey, Coach Austin, I got a question for you. I've always been pretty solid in the floor blocks, but I really struggle with the treadmill. I want to get better, but I don't know how. Any advice? So this is an Orange Theory question. You know, during the Orange Theory workout, the main three stations that are used throughout the hour-long workout are the treadmills, the rowers, and then the weight stations. And the treadmill seems to be a portion that a lot of people struggle with. And in a traditional 60-minute Orange Theory workout, the treadmill portion takes up about half of the workout, where the main focus every day is different, but the main focus is on training intervals of base, push, and all out. Base being a pace that is challenging but doable, push being sort of an uncomfortable effort but not a maximum effort, and then all outs being all out maximal effort. And so the question is here, struggling on the treadmill. What does that mean? Well, as a coach, when I see people that talk about struggling on the treadmills, a lot of the time, this has to do with people being unable to hold their base pace, that challenging but doable effort, after things such as a long push effort. And there's a really important thing to keep in mind on the treadmill at all times, and that is that you always need to be in control. And you should be able to hit your base pace after any sort of push effort. Now, after an all-out, of course, you want to walk after every all out, it's always a walk, rest, and recovery afterwards. But if you feel like you're someone who is struggling to hold base after a push, you have to understand that you're pushing too hard. Like whatever push you're going at, you're either doing that too intensely or your base pace is too fast and not manageable. Because we want to feel like when we go to base pace, while not at that exact moment, it feels like it's doable because you just did a push. But that after, 30 seconds or so of that base pace, that you feel like you have kind of done a sort of an active recovery, a shift away from that really intense push to a more manageable base pace effort. And if you're someone who struggles to hold the base after, your pushes are either too fast, too intense, or your base pace is too intense. And so it's a mixture of one of those. It could be a mixture of both. It could be one or the other. But you should never be at a point where you feel out of control on the treadmills. It's easy to get into that place, though, of feeling out of control, because on a treadmill, you just tap a speed, and as long as you don't fly off the back end of the treadmill, that's how you're doing the thing, right? But it's really easy to pick a speed that's way too intense for us to kind of shift back down from, because, our body isn't going to fly off the treadmill, but you could end up really, really spiking yourself up to an intensity that's just too hard to maintain. And so my best advice for that is dial back your pushes. Dial them back. General rule of thumb is 1 to 2 miles per hour over base. If you're within that range and you're still struggling to hit your base pace after, then you need to lower your base pace. And you need to remember that you have your entire life to get there, and you need to take it one day at a time, but every day needs to be a successful day by always being in control. One of the phrases that I've been using recently is keep your head above water. You should never feel like you're drowning on that treadmill. We need to learn to train like athletes, which means push ourselves really hard, but always be in control. So that's my best advice there. You might have to dial things back a little bit, make things a little bit more manageable. And once you're at a place where you can make these intervals manageable, where you're not having to walk during a base, walk as in rest, recovery walk during a base, or grabbing the handrails because you just feel like you're out of control. Once you get to a point where you're not doing that, then it's at that moment, or it's in those next workouts over the course of the next few days, weeks, months, where, if you're halfway through a push or halfway through an all out and coach is like, who's got a little more? Who can give a little bit more? And if you can tack on, 0.1, 0.2s in the middle of the effort, like those are the things that are going to progress you to push you forward. But you always have to start with being in control. Hope that helps. All right, next question. If you're limited on time, what is a great way to maximize a 1 hour workout that is not at Orange Theory? You have a treadmill and TRX and weights. So this is someone's very specific scenario that they have a treadmill, TRX, and maybe a few sets of dumbbells, and they're trying to look for a workout that's outside of Orange Theory. Well, I am going to do a little selfish plug-in here and remind everyone that I have a new online platform, HIIT Plus, which is literally designed, like the whole idea behind it was to give Orange Theory members something to do in between their Orange Theory days, where it's not just, hey, do this workout, it's actually guiding you through. So it's with me one-on-one, essentially in video format, where I'm leading you through a series of different workouts. And every week, new videos go up there. There's going to be over 60 new workouts on the platform by the end of the year, but there's already a couple dozen of them already up there. And it's a great way to have that sort of personal training that is outside of Orange Theory, where you're still getting in a good workout, but you know that you're doing things right, you're doing things effectively. So I have that platform out if you're curious on checking that out. But as far as like maximizing an hour workout that's not Orange Theory, it all kind of depends on what you want to do, what you want to train. And that is why I have the whole variety of workouts out there, because, some people might want to use that hour outside to do more flexibility work, mobility work, or focus on maybe calisthenics, bodyweight training, core training, rowing. This person obviously doesn't have a rowing machine, but they have TRX. There's TRX workouts that you can look up online too. It's hard to give you a best way to maximize it without knowing your scenario or not knowing what kind of training that you want to do. I would definitely recommend checking out HIIT Plus if you were looking for more of a guided routine. But other than that, though, if you're looking for an intense workout, I'm not going to say a specific plan as far as like do these TRX exercises, do these weight exercises. It all varies. But the point is that there are options out there, and there's lots of other things too, as far as like, just Google search a TRX hour-long workout. You'll find something cool there. But getting in a good mix of those three things that you have, like treadmill, TRX, and weights, if you've got 3 days of Orange Theory a week, on those 3 days in between, you can do one day a treadmill day, one day a TRX day, one day a dumbbell day. That's some examples of some stuff that you can do. Hey, Austin, really appreciate your vids. Looking for a modification to make a dumbbell sumo squat harder. A 70-pound dumbbell is not challenging anymore. Any recommendations? Thanks, man. Yes, I've got a recommendation. So dumbbell sumo squats, depending on the gym that you're in, the Orange Theory studio you're in, if you're doing it at Orange Theory, your dumbbells might be limited. And, in this case, 70 pounds is sort of the limited dumbbell. What you can do with a sumo squat is, instead of holding the weight under your chin, like sort of just holding it in front of you, you can actually grip the dumbbell from the bottom, from the floor. And yeah, you might not be able to get as deep into the squat, but when you do the weight from the floor, you actually have the ability to stack two dumbbells on top of each other. So you can take that 70-pound dumbbell and stack a 35-pound dumbbell on top of that, grab from the very bottom 70-pound dumbbell, and now you're lifting a total of 105 pounds for the squat. And again, you can't quite get as low as maybe you'd like to, but it is still an option to help you overload that exercise more. So try stacking a couple dumbbells on top of each other. Just make sure, of course, that the surfaces are flat and that they're lined up and that you're grabbing from the bottom weight. So hope that gives you an idea. Hope that helps. And that's how you make the sumo squat harder. All right, so another Orange Theory question here. Hello, coach. Quick question. I'm concerned about the max heart rate being too high. I'm 49 years old female, 5'9". Can I be putting stress on my heart? She reached over 190 beats per minute. Thank you for allowing me to reach out. You're welcome. And here's my advice. So what's interesting about heart rate and heart rate response to exercise is that everybody is different. Like, some people, the general rule of thumb is the more you get into the more fit you get, that the harder it becomes for your heart rate to get into the higher heart rate zones. However, that's not the case for everyone. And some people just have naturally high exercising heart rates. And what we're looking at here is a heart rate summary of how many minutes she spent in the 5 Orange Theory zones: gray, blue, green, orange, and red. And you can just think of those zones as scaling up as your heart rate increases. And with the majority of the time being spent in that orange and red zone, a lot of the time, if you're someone who's new to fitness, that is a very common result, because when your body's not used to this type of training, your heart rate tends to go very high, very fast, and stay very elevated for the first couple weeks, even couple months of your training. But some people that have naturally higher exercising heart rates, I mean, I know some of the members that have been, they're the fittest that they've ever been in their life, and they've been, hardcore exercising for the last 2.5 years. And as soon as they start running, their heart rate spikes up almost to their maximum right away. Like, some people just naturally have that. And so instead of necessarily worrying about your heart rate, when it comes to seeing improvements, seeing results, and getting to where you want to be, focus on the effort, the feeling. So, when it's time to push, when it's time to go hard, it needs to feel challenging. It needs to feel uncomfortable. If your heart rate is just high, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable, that's nothing to really be concerned with. Your body's not gonna give out from exercising too hard. Our bodies are way too smart to do that, unless you have some other underlying health conditions. So focusing on the feeling and being in the moment during the workout. Like, when it's time to go give a max effort, you better give your max effort, whether the heart rates are high or not. Like, you're going as hard as you can in that moment. When it's time to rest and recover, that you're resting and recovering. Like, you need to really listen to your coaches during the workouts. Push when it's time to go hard, rest when it's time to rest. Listen to your body and do the best you can. And I wouldn't concern yourself with the heart rates necessarily right now. Just focus on making those effort improvements day to day. And I think you're really going to start seeing the results that you're looking for, and your heart's not going to blow up or anything. So that's my advice for you. How many days should I rest? And should I do low intensity on, how many days should I rest? And should I do low intensity on rest days? How many calories should I eat a day? Are you a fan of keto? That's 3 questions. Just kidding. I'll answer all of them. Okay, so how many days should I rest, and should I do low intensity on rest days? So how many days you should rest from exercise? It all depends on what type of exercise that you're doing. I'm guessing this is in the Orange Theory context, so I'm just going to use the Orange Theory hour-long interval training workout as an example. The ideal for Orange Theory is 3 to 4 workouts a week. That 3 to 4 is optimal when you push yourself to your absolute maximum, which everyone really should be trying to do. However, some people get away with pushing about 80 to 85% of what they truly could give to the effort. If you walk out of that workout room and you feel like you can do another class, you could do it again, then, like, realistically, you didn't push yourself as hard as your body possibly could. And that's not a diss at you, that's just the reality of the situation. And so some people that aren't working out as intensely, they don't necessarily need as many rest days in between. But with 3 to 4 days of Orange Theory, for instance, 2 to 3 days of doing something low intensity. I don't think anyone should just sit on their butt, do nothing any day, really. Like, you should always get up and try to do some sort of movement, whether that's just a nice brisk walk outside, doing things like yoga, or maybe some rowing technique, something that gets you active and gets you moving in one way or another. But as far as high intensity days go, 3 to 4 a week, low intensity days, 2 to 3 a week. That is what I would recommend. And on those days off from exercise, your calorie intake should be different. How many calories should you eat specifically? For this person that's asking, I don't know how tall you are. I don't know how much you weigh. I don't know what your body fat percentage is. All of these things matter, and you need to track that yourself. You need to go into a food tracker app. My favorite is Chronometer. Put in your statistics. Make sure that you don't overestimate your activity level. Make sure you underestimate that. Gives you a good calorie goal for each day. And then as long as you're inputting the days that you do your purposeful exercise, that's going to scale how many calories you're eating for the day. So let's say like you were going to eat 2,000 calories on a day where you didn't exercise, but then you did work out and you burned 500 calories. Well, on that day, maybe you'd want to eat around 2,300 if your goal was fat loss, for instance, because your body burned 2,500 for the day. You might want to eat 2,300. But on a day you didn't exercise, if you're just going to eat 2,000 calories, or 2,000 calories is how many calories your body would burn, maybe you want to eat around 1,800 or 1,900, for instance. So it really does depend on the activity of the day. It's a little different if you're going into like a pure like bodybuilding, type of routine. That's a little bit different, where you do want to be eating in a caloric surplus, not in a deficit. But I digress. I recommend shifting your calorie intake based off of whether you're working out or not. It's very important that you manage that well, so that you get a good grasp of how much food you are eating a day. It's going to be very important for your weight loss, and much more important than the style of diet that you eat. That moves to that third question. Are you a fan of keto? Absolutely freaking not. Oh man, those of you that know me know that I'm entirely 100% vegan, primarily whole foods, plant-based as much as I can. I eat 5,000 calories a day, so I do eat some more refined things like white rice, for instance, just because, with the brown rice and everything, with 5,000 calories of plants, it's a lot of poop. So anyway, I digress from that. Keto, depriving your body of its natural preferred energy source, carbohydrates. And a lot of the times it's not done in a vegan style keto. It's like bacon, eggs, cheese, and meat. Like, does that sound good for you? Like, I want you to think, does that feel like it's going to give you the energy to run a 12 mile per hour all out? It's just it sounds enticing because you're like, oh, I can give up bread because I love meat and cheese. So this must be good for me. If you're looking to be a high performance athlete, keto is not going to be the way that you're going to be able to perform at a high intensity. These foods like meat, dairy, eggs, these keto foods, they've been shown time and time again to contribute to disease and are not indicators of good health. So absolutely not. 100% absolutely not. Please do not do keto. It's very unsustainable. Most people can't keep it up anyway. Most people think they're doing keto and they're really not, because to get actually into a ketosis is an extremely, extremely restrictive diet. Way more restrictive than like a vegan diet would be. So no, don't do keto. It's a lie. It's not good. Don't do it. Very bad for your health. Thanks for taking some questions. Is there some ideal stroke rate range I should be aiming for? This is a rowing question. So I actually have a video on this that just got released on my YouTube channel as a clip from last week's podcast, the rowing clinic that I did, talking a little bit about stroke rate. And the biggest takeaway from this is that you can row hard at any stroke rate, and that it's not necessarily about how fast you're moving up and down per stroke, but more about the pressure that you're bringing behind each stroke. That is going to be the result of the overall power and how fast you actually row. And so because of that, as far as like a range for a majority of your rowing workouts, you should be able to keep your range between 20 and 30 strokes a minute for pretty much any workout. And any stroke rate within that range of 20 to 30, for the most part. I'm not, it gets a little trickier when we talk about high-end, like 2,000 meter racing or 500 meter racing. But for most of your workouts, most of your rows, you should be able to stick between 20 and 30 strokes a minute and row well at any of that. I would recommend keeping it into the lower end and working on your pressure per stroke. That helps you build efficiency, because if you can row hard at a low stroke rate, you'll be able to row really fast at a high stroke rate. So that's what I would recommend. Keep it on the lower end if you can, but somewhere between 20 and 30 for most of your workouts should get the job done. Thanks for asking. What do you think is the best way to lower your body fat percentage? Well, eat less. Eat less. You need to be in a caloric deficit in order to effectively lose body fat. That's just the physics of the matter. Now, I'm reading a really good book right now, How Not to Diet, which is written by Dr. Michael Greger from nutritionfacts.org, which goes into, the science behind, not just eating less calories, but what types of foods. A calorie does not equal a calorie as far as our body's reaction to it, our overall health and our weight loss journey, even the timing of meals and frequency of that. It all depends, and it's a big book. It's pretty beefy. So I'm making my way slowly through that. So I don't have the specifics that I want to talk about from the book ready to give just yet, because I haven't read them yet. But just know that You do need to be in a caloric deficit to lose body fat. It's the physics of the matter. And not all calories are created equal. Minimize the processed food that you eat. Minimize your intake of meat, dairy, and eggs because they are not health foods. They only contribute to more negative health. And try to incorporate as many whole food plants into your diet as you possibly can because they're not only naturally very filling and satiating, but they're super good for you. They're super good for long-term health. And the more plants that you eat, the longer your longevity is, according to the science. So you have to eat less. You have to eat less calories than your body needs, and you want to try to eat as many whole foods as you can. So that's my recommendation for losing body fat percentage. Okay, final question. Then we're going to be done for this week's episode. So this is the last one. It's a rowing question. Should you always row near your maximum speed while having a good form? Near your maximum speed. So I'm thinking of that as like, should you just be going as hard as you can all the time for all of your rowing? No, I definitely would not recommend that. I mean, it all kind of depends on the context of how often you're using rowing. Let's say if you're using rowing 2 times a week and you're doing, a Tabata style of 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for 8 rounds for a total of 4 minutes, then yeah, you would want to row at your maximum intensity. But, if you're trying to row, 3 to 5 days a week or so, you want to be incorporating more steady efforts and not just rowing as hard as you can all the time. And what does rowing at maximum speed actually mean? Because your maximum speed for 20 seconds is different than your maximum speed for 1 minute or your maximum speed for 5 minutes or your maximum speed for 10 minutes. You should not just be going as hard as you can from the start and then just trying to hang on. It's not really an effective way to train or to progress yourself further. So you're much better off dialing things back. There's lots of great workouts out there to look at. I've got a few eBooks that give you rowing plans specifically to help you get better at rowing while managing stroke rates, understanding your pressure and intensity. So you can definitely check those out. But no, you should not be going as hard as you can all the time. Every time you sit on the rowing machine. Ever. Not ever, but you should not for the most part. So those were the first group of questions here. I would love to hear your feedback on this Q&A style of the podcast. And I would love to get more questions from you guys as well. Spark some good topics, some good conversations. So please feel free to send me questions that you might have. Just say, hey, a good idea. Here's a question for your next Q&A podcast. Let me know what you think, please. And leave a rating on the podcast if you haven't done so already on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you guys so much for listening, for tuning in. Keep pushing forward one day at a time. The sun rises and every day you get to try again. And I'll see you guys in the next podcast.